Being alone, or loneliness in itself, is one of the great universal human fears. Whether by choice or by force, when individuals end up alone, and often lonely, they find suffering, but then, sometimes, a breakthrough, a sense that they are actually just fine by themselves. Some people, in fact, need a great deal of time alone to be able to process their experiences of not being alone. And that is an important lesson. To disconnect from the world is to give the heart and soul a respite from experiencing external interactivity. It provides space for a person to reorient and process the way they are in the world, and perhaps even to improve. The legendary mystic Rebbi Nachman of Breslov taught that in order to truly fulfill our purpose in the world as Jews, we needed to spend time alone in conversation with God, which he referred to as hitbodedut. In his masterwork, Likutei Moharan, he wrote, "To return and be encompassed in the oneness of God is possible only through transparency. And the only way to attain transparency is through hitbodedut. By secluding oneself and speaking at length with God, a person merits negating all physical desires and bad character traits, to the point where they merit negating all corporeality and are encompassed in the source." Rabbi Nachman's practice of hitbodedut both provides connection to God and a path towards self-improvement. Through the time alone in contemplation of and conversation with the divine, the individual further refines themselves. In ancient Jewish cosmology, a skin disease, tzara'at, which Chase talked about earlier, functioned as a telltale sign of someone in need of behavioral improvement, having been destructive with their language, having driven people apart with their language. If one was discovered to have this disease, they were diagnosed by a priest and had a specific and detailed process to overcome it. One of the aspects of the cure for this disease was something akin to Rebbi Nachman's hitbodedut. They had to wander outside of the Israelite camp all alone, shouting, "Impure, impure." The brilliant Torah scholar Aviva Zornberg describes it in part like this: already rendered unsightly by his skin disease, his tattered clothes, wild hair, and covered mouth, they make him an object of revulsion. He becomes an object of negative sociability, a kind of embodiment of the other whose appearance, while recognizably human, helplessly proclaims his otherness. The word that the Torah uses to describe this state is badad, alone. Sometimes it is associated with security, but the singular quality of this aloneness is separation, a lone wolf existence. The Hebrew root of badad, alone, is the same as of Rebbi Nachman's hitbodedut. You can hear it in the BDD, badad. This root is used sparingly throughout the Torah. One of the most striking uses of it is its first. God notices shortly after his creation that the first human is badad, alone, and says, "This is not good," which is also the first use of the phrase "not good" in the Torah. One can imagine Adam looking quite like the one with skin disease, unclothed, wild hair, unable to speak, for there was no one to speak to. When God notices this, God brings Adam to be in connection with the world by having him name all of the animals, and then by creating him a helpmate, in Hebrew an ezer kenegdo, Eve, from Adam's own flesh, a person who he was then able to connect with via sympathy rather than just overseeing. Connection and sympathy are here the step after badad, after being alone. When God saw that Adam's aloneness was not good, it wasn't simply that God created more Adams, but instead created a network of relationships for Adam to be linked within. Badad was not good in this case, not simply because Adam was alone, but because there is no connective fabric for him to be woven into. Adam didn't have a community of others to be in relation with, or to choose to spend time apart from. And as we all know, the next part of the story also shows the danger of being in these networks of connection, as the speaking serpent, Eve, and Adam all participate in eating the forbidden fruit. Aviva Zornberg also notes that an ancient midrash picks up a question that elucidates more about the relationship between Badad, aloneness, and sympathy. It recounts that the child of a neighbor of Rabbi Gamliel, a famous ancient rabbi, died, and she was weeping for her lost child at night. Gamliel heard her weeping all alone and wept in sympathy until his eyelashes fell out. The word translated as sympathy here is the same word used when the book of Genesis describes Adam and Eve's roles for each other, keneged. It's a connective relationship, the goal when coming out of being Badad. The act that finally allows the skin-diseased person, the Mitzorah, in our Torah to return from being Badad, too, is one of deep human sympathetic connection. The ritual used by the priests in this week's Torah portion to reintegrate a Mitzorah into society itself is one of sympathy. The priest performs the exact same ritual used to anoint priests into their roles upon the Mitzorah, an intimate ritual involving placing sacrificial blood and oil on different parts of the individual's body, and then pouring that oil upon their head. In doing so, the priest surely relives his own experience of anointment through this person who has been cast out of society. And the individual being reintegrated into society feels himself anointed in the same way that elevated the priest to begin with. The ritual of sympathy, bringing these two individuals in extremely different social castes together as one, is the way to reintegration after being Badad. It brings these two individuals keneged, in sympathy with each other. Our Torah teaches that humanity's origins are, in fact, in Badad, in having been alone at first. But humanity's mode of development is in being in connection. Keneged one another. Keneged the world. Keneged God. We as a species are beginning to emerge from long periods of Badad, either only with our families or entirely alone. Our modes of being keneged were primarily mediated by technology for years, which both opened up windows of opportunity, to be sure, but also lacked the closeness and intimacy we feel when connecting with others. As we come keneged into connection with others once again, both en masse in public and individually, let us remember the lessons of Badad, the lessons of aloneness. The time we have had to be alone may not have been used to connect with God as Rebbi Nachman would suggest. It's been very stressful, very difficult, full of many, many challenges. But we still have the opportunity to return to that path as we reintegrate into shared space and shared life. How can we use this period of in-betweenness as we return to shared life to reflect on ourselves and our highest values in private, so that when we are together with others, we merit good, positive, and constructive interactions? How can we use this opportunity to reorient ourselves so as not to end up as a Mitzorah, forced into being alone in order to reorient ourselves towards sympathy and compassion? May we, through reflection and sacred connection, merit a transparency of spirit and soul that provides us sympathy and mutuality with others, using this opportunity to begin again, to reorient ourselves towards our best modes of interaction. And may we remember that the opportunity to improve only requires us to take some time alone. Shabbat Shalom.